Peyton.
I am Rachel. Welcome back to Sunday Remedy. We have a great episode for you guys today where we are unpacking why RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearings are so important and controversial at the same time.
Before we dive into it, just make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you get notified of any upcoming new episodes.
So, brief episode overview. We are going to simplify the complex nature of these hearings and the process, right? We're going to highlight a lot of the key moments and key players involved. We're just going to kind of have a conversation, shedding light on some of the narratives and maybe like the underlying truths, right? And we're also going to discuss the future of, the future potential of RFK Jr. and what, he could possibly do for our nation. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, so some Senate hearing updates. So he has not been sworn in yet. As of Wednesday of this week, it hasn't happened yet, but we have passed a key hurdle. So his nomination for Secretary of Health and Human Services, it has been voted to move past with the Senate Finance Committee. So all the Republican members, including Senator Bill Cassidy, has supported this decision. So right now, this is what we're waiting on. We're waiting on the nomination that will proceed to a full Senate vote. Mm-hmm. So if we can get enough votes with this full Senate, he should be sworn in, hopefully by the end of this week. But it has been a week, and as of yesterday, February 4th, that was one of the big things that we were waiting on.
Yeah, there's still a lot up in the air with this confirmation hearing, the confirmation and him aggregating enough votes to actually be nominated for this position. So
I think it's interesting that, this has been publicated. We've had so much hype over the MAHA movement over the past few months.
Yes.
But we don't think about these Senate hearings and getting sworn in and all these things that are going to be brought up through that, and that these things can just be dragged out. So I think this is not super common knowledge. Mm-hmm. A lot of people just expected RFK was going to come in and make all these changes, but there's things that we have to follow first. Yes. And so this is currently what we're experiencing is, there's all this hype around MAHA and everyone was so excited. And just because Trump appoints someone, we still live in a democracy.
Yeah, and one thing that we know about congressmen is they are not hugely fond of nuance. They do not tend to digest nuanced topics exceptionally well. And so a lot of what we're seeing in these Senate, confirmation hearings, they're asking very complex questions, and we're not allowed, RFK Jr. is not actually being given the time to respond to these complex answers. And so all of this to say, who is RFK Jr. and why do we care? Why do we want? Why is he in this position, right? Why has he been nominated? So he is the son of RFK, so Robert F. Kennedy, and the nephew of President John F. Kennedy, right? And I think that's fairly notable, right? The Kennedys have long-standing been a member of government. And he is also known for questioning the safety of certain vaccines and pharmaceutical industry influence, particularly through his organization, Children's Health Defense. He also launched an independent bid in 2024 for the U.S. presidential election. After initially running as a Democrat, he then dropped out to support Trump. He's got a big, long-standing commitment to environmental causes, and he's huge into public health advocacy. He's also married to Cheryl Hines.
Yeah, which is a fun fact that I actually didn't know.
You didn't know that?
Until House and Habit posted about it.
Okay, House and Habit, if you guys do not follow her, she is a free-thinking, independent journalist, fully self-funded. And she has truly, I think, changed what it means to be an independent journalist.
Yeah.
She's exceptionally intelligent, and I must commend her for her open mind. She has been so willing to, I think, take in new information about any candidate and just go wherever she's asked to go. And she just participates to the fullest extent, and I think gives everyone the time of day, right? So for RFK, he was receiving a lot of really heavy and intense negative press. And due to that, she did not think he was getting covered in the mainstream media very well. And so she kind of took it upon herself to, discover who is this independent candidate running for president of the United States. And in doing so, she went behind the scenes with him and his campaigns team and kind of gave Americans a really exclusive peek into who RFK Jr. is outside of what the press and mainstream media sources said he was. And that, I think, and she's done that for several candidates. And in doing so, we're able to see what issues he really cares about.
Yeah. And this isn't the first time that RFK has seen scrutiny. We've seen it when he had his presidential run and his name was taken off ballots. He wasn't allowed on the debate stage. So he's been exceptionally targeted by the media. Mm-hmm. So just keep that in mind when we're telling you about these facts from the Senate hearing. Although there is truth to some of these things, he is also always under intense scrutiny.
Yes.
So some of the key issues that they've been talking about during the Senate hearing is the medical freedom and vaccine transparency. Mm-hmm. This is something that, he focuses on and that he's been questioning. And so this is under intense scrutiny right now since he is going to be representing America's health. Mm-hmm. Environmental protection and climate action. You said, what is his hobby?
He loves to do falconry, you
guys.
Falconry. That's when, you have your falcon, and I think they fly away. It's a sport. And it's something that I did not know he was interested in until I started following House and Habit. But he loves falconry, so he's got a really intense respect for nature, and it's, I think, a sport he's been doing for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
So
that's something to commend him for, is he is very passionate about these things that he represents. Mm-hmm. Ending government and corporate corruption, which also ties in to big pharmaceutical, and just the things that come out with that. And restoring civil liberties and free speech, as we have seen, he has been exceptionally censored on the internet, on media. He hasn't been allowed to debate. He's been taken off ballots. Things like that, he has seen it through and through. So it's something that he wants to push forward with, is free speech, because he knows what it feels like.
Yes. So, with this, what was his path to nomination? So, we saw the significance of his nomination on that current political landscape. That moment where he kind of decided to, in many ways, team up with Trump in this. So he looked at the ballots he was being taken off of. He saw the writing on the wall, and he decided to withdraw his presidential run. And with that, he was President Donald Trump's nomination on January 29th of 2025. Again, this was officially teased long before with that iconic photo of RFK and Donald Trump shaking hands very shortly after he announced that he was withdrawing his presidential candidacy.
Yeah. So now into the chunk of it all, the confirmation hearings. So the Senate Finance Committee convened on January 29th of this year to evaluate RFK Jr.'s suitability for the HHS role. So that's what you've been seeing everywhere on X if you follow it. Mm-hmm. This is all of the controversy that we've been seeing. Some of the key discussion points that has caused controversy, and this is why he hasn't been sworn in yet. He obviously has a history of historical concerns about vaccine safety. It's something that he's very vocal about. If you go to his Instagram, he has plenty videos, interviews. That is kind of his brand. So he has his own views on potential links between vaccines and autism. And so this is something that the Senate is concerned about, just because, is it causation? Is it correlation? They just want to make sure that whatever is accurate, he's representing the health in our country. So knowing that, they are taking extra precaution to make sure that he is not sounding the alarm on false narratives.
Yeah, and something else that, RFK is very passionate about is transparency from the medical institutions, right? So kind of building on what you said with the vaccine, transparency and just certain things that he's expressed his views on in the past. He is advocating for studies to be done that maybe have not been done. He's very interested in seeking truth, and there's a lot of nuance involved here. And with that, he's also interested in seeking the truth of the food and nutrition of our country. And so he is very much an advocate of removing harmful additives from our food and just promoting that nutritional transparency that Americans, I think, so desperately need. And his vision for just reforming our country on a national food scale, and really prioritizing true public health from also a preventative standpoint and instead of just a reactive standpoint. Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, this also gives the FDA a huge opportunity to grow. It's not like he's trying to cut off the FDA. This actually gives them opportunity for more jobs because this leads to more studies. Mm-hmm. So it's actually extremely beneficial for our country, makes us have a stronger healthcare system. And so I think like when you think of it, it makes it, some perspectives make it seem like RFK is trying to just cut out an organization completely. He's actually just trying to make it stronger.
Yeah, he's interested, I think, in reform and just kind of taking a look closer into, you know, also the financial transparency of the institutions in question, right? Where is their money? And at the same time, he's also being questioned about his financial records and his transparency, right? So there have been a lot of questions regarding his personal debts and certain income sources. And, you know, he's been responding to those questions about those potential conflicts of interest, I think in a very ethical way. And, you know, at the same time, we also do have to kind of flip the coin and look at who's asking those questions as well.
Yeah. And I know all of this can seem like, you know, you're putting someone under and investigating all of these things, but this is actually very normal in a Senate hearing. Like, you're about to be sworn in to represent a department of our country, which is extremely important that you have values that reflect what you're representing. And so this is very normal. However, some of these things can be controversial because we don't have an actual fact that can prove or disprove any of that will stand solid in court right now. So I think that's kind of where the controversy stems from, but all of these are pretty valid. Like, you have to take a look at a human and all of the things that they believe in. If they're sounding the alarm, is it true or not? Because we have had crazy politicians that are shouting from propaganda and not from the truth. So I think all in all, with all of this, we'll see if, you know, it's likely that he does get sworn in, but it's comforting because it's due diligence.
I agree. You know, and by the same token, you know, diving into someone, you know, I wish we dove into our congressman this way. But at the same time, you know, the way that this is the process, this is the way that we maintain law and order. And if you're going to be nominated to a really prestigious role in our country, I think, you know, being able to stand the scrutiny and withhold, you know, maintain composure, I think that's important. And to my, you know, I've watched quite a bit of the Senate hearings, and I thought, you know, he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah. He's been very even-keeled in his responses, so I think even seeing that is really comforting. So I think no matter what side of the aisle that you're on, this should be a moment, you know, watching this it's our country fulfilling their duties. And I think that's the best thing right now is this is what we want in our country.
It's also a message of unity because he's aiming for transparency from many of these institutions and agencies that maybe have not necessarily seen accountability in a while. And it's demanding that transparency and from those agencies that I think any American can get behind, right? Because we're all interested in the truth. We all have a vested interest in knowing what is actually happening. And so, you know, if there's anything that's currently going on that shouldn't be, I want to know that now as opposed to in 20 years. And so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is basically the narratives that we're seeing in the courtroom versus what's actually reality. So the narrative that we have in the courtroom is Kennedy has been a prominent critic of vaccines, as we've talked about, linking them to various health issues, including autism. So during the hearings, he faced intense questioning about these views and how it might influence the public health policy if he were confirmed. So if he does take this position and he keeps sounding the alarm, what does that look like for America? Is it going to frighten people if it's not true? How is he going to go about that? And like Rachel said, he's focusing on transparency. It's not a scare tactic. He's not trying to fear America and turn them against big pharma. It's more so just wanting the studies for transparency. So that's kind of what we're seeing throughout.
Yeah, that and informed consent is something that RFK is very big on. So, you should receive the full picture from your physician prior to, which I don't think is controversial. I think that should be something that we all demand in our health.
Yeah. And so another thing that they've been talking about during the hearings is the family opposition. So Carolyn Kennedy, daughter of President JFK and RFK's cousin, publicly opposed his nomination. So she wrote a letter to the U.S. senators. She labeled him a predator and unqualified, criticizing his vaccine skepticism and alleging that he misrepresented himself. She also highlighted that while he discouraged vaccinations publicly, he ensured his own children were vaccinated. So all of this is also, we don't know what is truth, what is not on this, and this tends to happen a lot where family turns against a politician.
There's likely nuance that we're not seeing in here, right? But it's something worth noting that this did come out. This is a letter of someone, relatively close to RFK Jr. And so we did think it was relevant to bring it up. But, he's also pretty vocal about, the path that his children were on. He does often reference that his children have a lot of allergies.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know if that's a related factor.
Yeah.
But he's never said that as a fact.
And I also think whether his kids are or are not vaccinated, again, he wants that medical, the freedom that you're able to make these decisions based on the information that you have, so he knows enough. Yeah. So I think that's very unrelated. It's not like he is an anti-vaxxer as people frame him. It's more of just the transparency.
He just raises questions, and people don't necessarily like controversial questions raised, right? Another thing is, ethical concerns have been raised during the hearing. So questions have been raised about Kennedy's financial interest, particularly his involvement with a law firm specializing in pharmaceutical litigation. Critics argue that his financial ties could present conflicts of interest if he were to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. This, I think, is an interesting take with the ethical concerns associated. I personally think that his, specialty in pharmaceutical litigation makes him uniquely qualified, rather than, a point of contention. His critics may argue that these, are conflicts of interest, but I'd argue that those sitting in the seats across from him, the congressmen, are also laden with public, conflicts of interest that the public should be made more aware of as they're conducting their questioning.
And there tends to be plenty of conflict of interest when you step into these roles.
Sure.
Just things that, we have Elon Musk coming in with Doge, and he owns a big tech company. Is he still going to be CEO and things like that? So there are implications that happen, but it's whether that's going to make you better for your role, and they can see that or not. But it seems like the Republicans have decided.
Yeah. The next thing that is kind of like a point of contention here during these hearings is the political and public health implications of his nomination. So his nomination has sparked a broader debate about the role of personal beliefs in public health leadership. Supporters argue that his skepticism could lead to necessary scrutiny and reform within the health agencies, while opponents fear it could undermine public trust in vaccination programs and other health initiatives. So I think that this is ultimately just, you have two sides of the aisle, people who potentially have gone down certain rabbit holes, people who have not yet, gone down those rabbit holes. Which one is it? And I think this is a fair enough question. Anyone, I think, who's been led to believe a certain thing for a certain period of time, it's tough, right, to change your way of thinking. If you've been doing something for 20, 30 years of your life or something, and then someone comes in and tells you, actually, maybe that's not the way. Yeah. Or you have someone like RFK who's insinuating that potentially, autism, which maybe you did go forward with vaccines for your child. Maybe your child does have autism. Could the decline of those things potentially have made a difference? That's a hard pill to swallow, I think. And whether it does or does not, truthfully, the fact of the matter is we don't know that at this time. There's speculation, there's certain things, but I would personally like the answer.
Yeah. So that leads to what is coming next. So
Yep.
will he be approved? Will he be rejected? That's something that hopefully we'll find out within the next few days. The broader implications, if he does get accepted, we're gonna have a lot of talk around the public health.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that's really exciting. We've already seen it with the red dye getting banned.
Yep, red dye 3.
Yeah, red dye 3. So with that one small thing getting banned, although there's so much more work to be done, we've already seen the discussion that's been happening around that, the excitement. People are looking into their health, the ingredients. And I think it's just knowledge is power, and advocating for this, making this information widespread is only going to make us a healthier, stronger country.